Gregor Brown, a bit of news just broke that I think that we need to talk about. Paris-Roubaix. It has not been canceled, but rescheduled to the first weekend in October. What are your thoughts?
Michael, we're looking at Paris-Roubaix that's going to be postponed 6 months from now. No, this is not an April Fool's joke. This is truth. The French government, just yesterday we saw French President Macron further lock down the country. You know, they have 40,000 infections a day, so it was putting further pressure on the race to postpone itself, even before we had the pressure coming from the head of the Nord department there, where the race is run from Compiègne to Roubaix. So yeah, instead of the weekend after Flanders, we're gonna now have Paris-Roubaix the weekend after the World Championships, which is held up in Flanders, Michael.
Yeah, Gregor, and while this is it's a sad situation for everybody, of course, the spike in cases is bad news for the region. Fans want to see Paris-Roubaix held after Tour of Flanders, when it traditionally is in the spring. However, I have to say there are a lot of silver linings here, and the big one is that we are essentially going to get a second Holy Week of cycling in the fall. Keep in mind this period between Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, the two big cobbled monuments of the sport, it's known as Holy Week. You know, serendipitously, the World Championships this year are held in the Flanders region. It is a Tour of Flanders World Championships, if you will. And you go forward 1 week and we're going to have Paris-Roubaix. So it's kind of a perfect makeup and do-over if you do have to do it again. I think there is more good news to come. In that originally, the women and men, keep in mind, we have been trying to have a women's Paris-Roubaix for over a year now. Last year, 2020, was supposed to be the first edition of the women's Paris-Roubaix. It's been moved to 2021 because the race never happened last year. So we're still waiting for a women's edition. But with this rescheduling, it is allowing the women and men to race on different days, which I am just so happy about. Both as a fan, we are going to get 2 days that weekend of watching Paris-Roubaix magic, but also being able to cover it. Having women and men race their really big races on the exact same day puts a huge strain on everybody trying to actually cover both races. They typically start at very different times in very different places. They don't start in the same towns. So for Gregor, someone like you who's trying to cover both the women's and men's race, it is so difficult when they're held on the same day. Giving them their own individual days to shine is going to really make the coverage of both the women's and men's race that much better.
Exactly, Michael. It'll help it stand out, and that's what we want, you know. And there's been no word yet on if they'll put the juniors race back in, because also typically during the men's race in the past, they'd run the juniors race, and that's where I was first introduced to Tom Pitcock. I remember interviewing him in the infield while the elite men were still racing. The juniors race finished there on the famous cement velodrome in Roubaix. So now, yes, we're going to have the women's race on Saturday and the men's race on Sunday, October 3rd. That weekend of October 2nd and 3rd will be a pretty cool weekend. And I wonder now if Flanders Classics will create a race similar to the Skill de Prix or move another race around. So we'll have a midweek tune-up race to keep the motors running after the World Championships on that Wednesday heading into Paris-Roubaix. But, you know, hopefully the coronavirus gods will shine down on us, and we'll just move things in our way, and we'll finally have this race. We'll finally have a women's race, and by the end of the summer and the fall, we'll have a clearing up of cases. But what would be nice would be some clouds of rain, and we'll get a rainy Paris-Roubaix as well. So there are a lot of factors, positive factors, that come out of this, despite not having Paris-Roubaix for the last couple of springs, Michael.
Yeah, Gregor, that is my takeaway. I have been, experiencing the coronavirus cloud of dread this past week that we have just become so familiar with, especially while covering cycling, never knowing if the races are going to happen, what you're going to do on a week-to-week basis. I have just been bracing for bad news from Paris-Roubaix, but after the news broke this morning, I'm actually feeling quite optimistic, quite happy. I think that, like I said, they're making the absolute best out of a bad situation. Having Paris-Roubaix a week after the Flanders World Championships, it's going to be such a fantastic week of racing in the fall, and we're just going to have to look forward to that.
We can never know about the days to come. Anticipation. It's what Carly Simon said, and that song was just going over and over in my head. I was just waiting for this announcement. You knew this announcement was going to come, but it wasn't out there. And then it finally drops on April 1st, April Fool's Day, that it's Paris-Roubaix is canceled, because it was looking more and more likely that it wasn't going to happen. I think now for the teams and the riders themselves, they'll have more certainty. They can train for a date and know they're likely going to race on that date, because having that uncertainty around having the race on April 11th, a week from this Sunday, no one can plan for that, and it's difficult. And I was also speaking to one of the team managers, I can't mention any names, but they were saying this is great. It gives our team a little bit more chance to be ready, because they weren't quite up to snuff so far this spring.
Yeah, so positives to take away. In the meantime, please do tune in to FloBikes to watch the Tour of Flanders, which is now definitively the biggest springtime monument on the calendar. We're looking forward to seeing all the action there. Gregor, we'll see you at the races.